Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Whiskey River speaking. Today I am doing something a little different. I'm doing a bedtime story, if you will, to help you fall asleep for those of you who also suffer from insomnia and, those fucking, all that bad shit. So what I'm going to be doing here is, well, there should be some audio in the background, some nice calming rain or a fire crackling. I haven't made up my mind yet. What it's going to be is I'm going to tell you the story of, I'm going to be telling you firearms history. And this episode is going to be about the OG JMB himself, John Moses Browning. So if you would just relax, keep the audio down low, whatever, lie down, close your eyes, I will hopefully have you off to sleep in no time. So John Moses Browning was an American firearm designer who was born on January 23rd, 1855. He developed 128, I believe. Let me check my notes here. Yes, 128. And he developed 128 firearm patents, you see. And, he developed his first gun at the age of 13. I don't have any information on what that firearm was, but it was likely just a simple single-shot weapon that he put together in his father's gun shop. You see, his father was a Mormon who was one of the ones who was part of the exodus from Navarro, or wherever, all the way out to Salt Lake, where they, set up their thing out there. And his father had 3 wives, a harem. He was a hentai protagonist, He had 22 children, and Mr. Browning here, John Moses Browning, was one of them. His father's name was Jonathan Browning, which is kind of confusing. But he established a gunsmith in Ogden in 1852, and he worked there, and he introduced his son, John, at the age of 7. He was taught basic engineering and manufacturing principles and encouraged to experiment with new concepts. There, he developed his first rifle. I do have it down my notes here. It was a single-shot falling block action design, and it was in 1878 that he partnered with his brother, Matthew Sandifer Browning, and they named it the Browning Arms Company. They produced this rifle and other firearms. In 1882, they employed John and Matthew and his half-brother Jonathan, Thomas, William, and George. And his father, he was a part of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And he did a 2-year mission in Georgia. He was a one-woman man, unlike his dad. He married Rachel Teresa Child on April 10th, 1879 in Ogden, Weber County. And they had 10 children, 2 of whom died in infancy, sadly. He is probably the most successful, I'm going to go off the notes for a minute here. He is probably the greatest, most successful firearms developer in the world. Like most people, they get maybe 1 or 2 guns patented, they get that done. This man had 128 patents. This man invented the pistol slide. Like, the slide that you cock back on every handgun, like every Glock, everything ever. Like, he invented that. Like, if you can understand the tremendous impact this man had on the firearms world. And many of his guns are still used today in one form or another. Many of them are just used in the formula that produced him. Let me get back to my notes here. Where was I? So the Browning Model 1878 single-shot rifle caught the attention of Winchester Repeating Arms, the Winchester Company, and they sent a representative to evaluate the competition. Winchester then bought the design for $8,000 and moved production to their Connecticut factory. In 1883, Browning worked in partnership with Winchester and designed a series of rifles and shotguns, and most notably the lever-action Winchester 1887. Now, the 1887 is, I believe this is the gun. Yes, it is. Basically, Winchester came to him and they were like, hey, we need a lever action to sell. And he was like, all right. And he just slapped this thing together in like, I think it was 16 days or so. And it can be assembled by basically putting an empty bullet casing in the gun. And then everything just assembles around that bullet. And then you just pull the lever and it ejects the empty shell casing. And, you know, you're ready. You can disassemble it and reassemble it very easily for cleaning using a spent casing from your last shot. It's a brilliant design, really, just absolutely genius. Anyway, he also invented the 1897 pump shotgun and the falling block single shot 1885, model 1885, as well as the lever action model 1886, model 1892, model 1894, 1895. Actually, another thing about it, it might be one of those lever actions that I'm thinking of here. I don't know, but he made that lever action, and it's awesome. And eventually, they had a falling out. You see, he designed the world's first semi-automatic shotgun. It was the Browning Auto 5, had 5 shots, and it used a long recoil system. You see, the whole barrel would recoil into the gun, and that would cycle it, and it would get a new shot in the chamber. You see, he took it to Winchester, and instead of asking for the single payment that he usually got from them for basically all the rights, he asked for royalties, which is smart considering the fact that he is, you know, their #1 designer at this point. And they said no. So John Moses Browning instead went to Remington, and the guy at Remington, the CEO, what was his name? I have his name somewhere here. I don't remember. He went to Remington Arms, and the president of the company was informed that John Moses Browning is here to see you, and he died of a heart attack. Probably because he was like, oh my god, this Giga Chad's outside, what am I gonna do? And then he died. So yeah, they died of a heart attack, and they would later produce a copy of the Auto 5 as the Model 11, which was used by the U.S. military, and in some limited use. It was, yeah, like everyone thinks of the trench shotgun was that pump action shotgun with the massive bayonet on it. Yeah, no, they also had different shotguns too. They used the Model 5 extensively, which had less magazine capacity, I believe. Though, I mean, they did create specialized tubes for like the French police that had 8 rounds instead of 5, so I don't know why they just didn't use one of those. Just a quick one there, guys, with the Superior Shotgun by John Moses Browning. So, yeah, they did that. And since he couldn't, like, go to Remington now because the guy was dead, and they were all they were fixing that shit up, he went overseas to Belgium, to Fabrique Nationale, FN. And he took the shotgun to them, they accepted it, they gave him royalties, and FN even honored him by naming it the Browning Auto 5. And it was continuously manufactured all throughout the 20th century. And in response, Winchester stopped producing John Browning designs, and they adopted a shotgun by the design of Thomas Crossley Johnson. It obviously wasn't as good. It was based upon Browning designed Winchesters like the 1897, and this was the end of their collaboration. It was basically Winchester's a bunch of bitches. Anyway, he went and dedicated the rest of his life to building guns, you know, like a fucking Giga Chad, and he, you know, literally died at the workbench working on the Browning High Power, which was, he invented the 1911, as you all know. Like, if you don't know that, like, what are you doing? He invented the 1911, and the Browning High Power was essentially taking the 1911 to its logical conclusion as the superior firearm, the superior sidearm in the world, you know? It had a 14-round double-stack magazine. It was a 9mm, which isn't as great as God's caliber 45, which, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, that wasn't actually a nuclear bomb. That was literally just a guy in the plane with a 1911 just shot the city with a 45, and boom. Yeah, they don't want you to know that because, they don't want you to know about the power of the 45. It's a whole, CIA propaganda thing that they're doing. But yeah, that's the truth of it. It was literally just a guy with a 45. That's all it was. So yeah, he invented that, and it's still used as the sidearm of both the Australian and Canadian Army. Yeah, like everyone else has moved on to all this new bullshit. Like all you really need is a high power. That's all you need. Not a high point, a high power. A high point is shit. Now, he also invented the Browning Superposed, which is the over-under shotgun. If you played Fallout New Vegas, the caravan shotgun, yeah, that's the Browning Superposed, basically. It is still made as the Browning Satori, and it's sold in Asia, mainly. Yeah, it has premium quality wood, engravings you can order it with. It's a real neat gun, looks really nice. There's actually a photo of Barack Obama using one at Camp David out there somewhere. Yeah, it's a nice gun for classy gentlemen, Like, I really want one of those, man. I'm going to buy one of those. I'm going to save up and get one of them. Anyway. Yeah, Browning designed also the M1895, which was a machine gun. It was known as the potato dicker because it had an operating lever that swung out forward to the front underneath it, and that was what, operated it. It was like, the gas would push it forward, and then it would come back, and that would, load a new one. It was a belt fed. And if you mounted it too low, it would dig a hole in the ground like you're going to plant a potato. So, yeah, that one was developed in 1895. It was used worldwide. It was used by the Russians. They have it ordered and chambered in 7.62-54R. It was used by the British in 303 Brit. It was used by the Americans in 30.6. I believe there was a photo or something that came out of Africa from some mercenaries in the 80s of an old beat-up M1895 machine gun from Browning. I don't know what it was chambered in. It looked like a 7.62-54R, like a Russian model. I don't know how it got there, but it was still kicking. It was still being used, and that thing is a fucking beast. It does have a tendency, though, if it gets too hot, the barrel will actually get so hot it will cook off a round, and that will cycle the gun because, there's powder, there's pressure in the chamber, and whatever, that makes the gun shoot. So after you let off the trigger, if you shoot it for too long, it will shoot 5 or 6 more rounds. And that's not good. But it was one of the first machine guns that was entirely portable by hand and didn't require any water cooling or any bullshit like that, like the Maxim did. And that made it really useful because you could have one or two dudes carrying that stuff to the front. They get in position, set it up, and they just start shooting, That's it. Whereas the Maxim, you need to bring 10 dudes, get water, parts, ammo. It's a big, heavy gun, whereas the 1895 was much lighter, much more portable. It was much more useful in combat where the lines shifted and stuff. So, that's cool. It was also used on PT boats and stuff. Yeah. Oh, there's also the 37mm M4 autocannon, which was cool. Yeah, look that up. It's a neat gun. Actually, I'm going to open up this. I'm going to get a Wikipedia article so I can read about it to you. So it's an autocannon that was used by both the Soviet Union and the United States from 1942 to 1945 in U.S. service. It was designed by Browning, built by Colt, and was used in the P-39 Air Cobra and the P-63 King Cobra. It was designed primarily as an anti-aircraft weapon, had a muzzle velocity of 2,000 feet per second, and a cyclic rate of 150 rounds per minute. It was normally loaded with high explosive shells, but could also be loaded with M80 armor-piercing shells, which could penetrate up to 1 inch of armor at around 500 yards. It was magazine-fed and could be fired manually or by remote control through a solenoid. Recoil and counter-recoil were controlled hydraulically. Recoil mechanism of the gun include the tube extension, recuperator piston, piston rod, lock frame assembly, driving spring assemblies, and the breech lock assembly. Non-recoiling parts include the trunnion block group, the feed box, and the feeding mechanism, recuperator cylinder, and-bushing, the backplate group, and the manual charger assembly. As it was originally designed, could be fed by a 5-round clip, 15-round link belt, or a non-disintegrating 30-round endless belt magazine. The 30-round endless belt version was used exclusively in production. The M4 gun only fed from the left. 30-round endless belt magazine was given the designation M6. It had an oval-shaped framework, was known as the horse collar magazine. And initial loading and cocking of the gun were accomplished manually. Safety feature incorporated into the trigger mechanism prevented firing until the breech block assembly was in battery position, etc., etc., etc. I'm not going to bore you with too many mechanical details. Let's just skip straight to the history. 37mm cannon was not liked for its low muzzle velocity and more pronounced drop than other weapons. The only standard aircraft with the M4C service was I already listed those. It was used as a limited standard aircraft in North Africa and the Pacific Theater by USAF and the Allied Air Forces. But some YP-38s, prototype of the P-38 Lightning, mounted a single M4 before the armament scheme was finalized. Production Lightnings, though, would replace the M4 with an AN M2 20mm cannon. Experimental XP-58 Chain Lightning was larger, more heavily armed version of the P-38 Lightning, equipped with quadruple M4 cannons instead of the M2 heavy machine guns. Its original purpose, like the German Bf-110, was to destroy formations of bombers, but was later re-envisioned as a ground attack plane. The more pronounced ballistic trajectory was unfamiliar for American pilots, and 4 M4 were replaced with a single 75mm M5 cannon and a pair of 50 caliber heavy machine guns. The first United States jet, the P-59 Aero Comets, mounted a single M4 cannon in the nose along with 3 50 caliber machine guns. Now, did my voice just crack there? The Soviets, by the way, also used M4s with P-39 Air Cobras and P-63 King Cobras that we supplied them during the Lend-Lease. We did not give them any armor-piercing rounds. Instead, they got just high explosives. It was sometimes employed against soft ground targets on the Eastern Front, but was primarily used in air-to-air combat. Soviets did not use the P-39 for tank busting. They appreciated the M4's reliability, but complained about its low rate of fire, 3 rounds per second, and small magazine size, 30 rounds. And, the BAR is also a very interesting one, the Browning automatic rifle. You all know it, you all love it, but what if I told you the M240, the 7.62 NATO machine gun used by the United States and most other NATO countries is actually a BAR. It's literally mechanically the exact same, except for the fact that it has a feeding mechanism very similar to the MG40 or MG42 or whatever. And it's just the BAR flipped upside down and mounted with one of those things that just feeds. And that's literally it. That's the bar. And it's still used to this day. It's still produced by FM. The M1911 is still used in American military service. Did you know that? By Marine Special Forces. Yeah, no shit. The M2 Browning machine gun, the Modus, that's also Browning's design. You all know it, you all love it. and everyone really loves it. Like, no one doesn't love it, honestly. It's a 50 caliber machine gun. Come on, dude. Speaking of which, 50 caliber Browning machine gun was also invented by John Moses Browning. So was 45 ACP. Anyway, oh man, there's so many guns here. I can't get through all of them. Man. Well, I think that is, how much time is on this line? Yeah, I think that will be all for your bedtime story tonight. Sleep well, have a nice day tomorrow, and remember, take care of yourself, you know? Like, rest easy, fella.